Well, can you remember the phase of your childhood when your mother used to make delicious fast food for you with full of love, emotions, and the quality? Now, why I am asking you this question, it is all because maybe this culture is even existing in rural areas, but when we talk about urban areas, this culture seems to be vanishing. And not only that, this trend was important for maintaining your nutritional health and diet, but also these traditions used to make less burden on the environment, on the natural resource, on the farmers. But with the proliferation of urban culture, the burden on the natural resource, on the environment, on your health is increasing. And that's why this fast food culture comes with a cost. The cost which you have to bear, the cost the environment has to bear, the cost the farmers has to bear. Hello and welcome you all to the Bajirao IAS Academy. Today is 20th of October and we are going to discuss the Hindu news analysis. So basically in today's article we are going to discuss on this issue as well, that is on the issue of food system and how the current food system is not sustainable, whether it is for you, whether it is for the environment, and whether it is for the farmers. So how we can tackle the food system, how can make it sustainable, how can we make it environmentally qualitative. Okay, so we all are going to discuss on all these topics, and today we have to discuss on the three topic for the editorial. The first related to the India's food system, the second will be related to the shape of climate justice in a warming India. We are seeing that global climate temperature rise is happening due to the climate change and the global warming. So, this is a stark contribution by humans in contributing to the global warming. But this contribution to the global warming has inequality in it. What type of inequality? Basically, the developed countries which you are seeing now, they were the major contributor in the emissions of the greenhouse gas, but the burden are mostly faced by the developing and the underdeveloped countries who contributed very less or minimal to the climate change. And the second and the third article will be related to the ICMR drone deliveries drugs, meaning the Indian Council of Medical Research basically via drones they tested that the drug deliveries can be happen in the geographically isolated or the geographically hazardous region. For example, in the mountainous region where the roadway or the runway is it not a good quality, and because of these hurdles the emergency facilities related to the health like delivery of the medicines are basically gets affected. So this is very innovative concept so that the essential medicines should be delivered to the required persons and the hospitals in the needed time. So we all will be going to discuss in a detailed manner, and for the prelims we are going to discuss one article that is also very important on the topic cervical cancer. Okay, So if you are liking our initiative, please do like, share, subscribe, and also share with your friend circle so that your friend should also join into the discussion and start getting the right information and the content for your examination. Okay, and as you all know, we start our discussion with a warm up session where we try to discuss the previous year questions of prelims and for the mains. So the prelims question you have to solve, you have to attempt. Okay, the question is, with reference to the ancient India, consider the following statements. The first statement: the concept of stupa is Buddhist in origin. The second statement: a stupa was generally a repository of relics. The third statement: a stupa was a votive and commemorative structure in the Buddhist tradition. And here, as you all know, that UPSC in 2023 examination prelims paper, they introduced the concept of pairwise options. Okay, so here you have to choose the correct pairs. And first of all, maybe you have read about the Buddhism and Jainism, as it is very important topic for the UPSC. So do you know about a stupa? Okay, and if you know, then you may answer this question very well. And if you not, don't worry, we are going to provide you the solution along with detailed discussion in the last session of our discussion video. So please be continued with us to have a proper discussion on this topic. You will be getting the answers as well on this question. Okay, so please be continue with us. And now it's time to solve the UPSC mains question, and the question which has been asked in UPSC GS paper 2023, and the GS paper, it is basically GS paper 2. So the question is, development and welfare schemes for the vulnerable by its nature are discriminatory in approach. Do you agree? Give reasons for your answer. Here the question is asking in a negative term, like what the welfare schemes or the developmental schemes we are focusing for the vulnerable. And the vulnerable can be your minorities, can be your women who are facing the discrimination, or the tribal groups. Okay, and we are launching series of developmental initiatives and welfare schemes. So whether this initiative are discriminatory in approach, you have to point out your region. Okay, so that is the question. And look at the question UPSC is asking, that demands that your thinking process should be like multi-dimensional. Although we talk about that these welfare schemes are aimed to make benefit for the vulnerable section, but look at the question UPSC has asked, they reverse the pattern. Okay, so try to be multi-dimensional, and you had to be, okay, because the pattern of questions nowadays UPSC is asking demands such a type of approach. So now we are shifting to our discussion, and the first article will be related to GS paper 2, and it is very interesting article. You will enjoy it. Okay, so first of all, when we talk about the context, the World Food Day was celebrated on October 16, but the World Food Day which was celebrated, but when we talk about the food system, there is a great ignorance of the food system. And what do you mean by food system? We need to understand. Like we say that what you do in your environment, there is a interrelationship, there is a cause and effect. So the food system basically describes the interconnectedness system and the process that influence variety of factors like nutrition, your food, the health, the community development, and agriculture. Let us take an example. Let's say you are now fond of eating fast food, So tell me whether your health situation will deteriorate or not. Maybe. Whether your nutrition gets fulfilled or not, may not be. Why? Because fast food culture do provides rapid energy, but when it comes to the nutrition, when it comes to the health, it doesn't guarantees. So that's why the food system is an interconnected system, and it is interconnected with the agriculture, with the nutrition, with the food, and many more. You can see the interconnectedness in the diagram. Okay, and what is the primary goal of the food system? If we ask you, basically it is to ensure nutrition security for all. But the question arises again, that how to ensure nutrition security for all, because in the present food system we are seeing that the fast food culture or the crisis due to the climate change is going to increase. So in the coming future, how we can ensure our nutritional security? Okay, so for that we need to focus on three pillars of our food system. And which are those three pillars? One is your farmer's livelihood. Okay, the second one is your environmental security, the third one is your nutritional security. Now I will ensure you to understand you that how these three pillars are interconnected. Okay, when we are talking about nutritional security, of your nutritional security, of your family's nutritional security, so on which it is dependent, it is dependent on farmers. Okay, so if the farmer and the farming system is resilient to the climate change, resilient to any disaster, okay, that means the farmers will be better to produce the agriculture and the crops. Okay, so that will ensure your nutritional security. But when we talk about the farmers security, to whom the farmers security is dependent, the farmers security is dependent on environmental security. Whether the environment is robust or not, is resilient or not, that will determine the farmer's security, the livelihood of the farmer. Okay, and when we talk in the present scenario, then we are seeing that the burden on the natural resource from where the food comes, like on the soil, on the groundwater, okay, they are increasing. That means the resilience here is not there in case of the natural resource, that may affect the farmer's livelihood, and that ultimately will be affecting your nutritional security. Hope you understood the relations and the interconnectedness. Okay, and our food system that needs to be sustainable. Sustainable means what? That caters the need of the present and also caters the need of the future. That means we should have an utmost priority to whom? To these pillars, to the environmental security, that will ensure farmers livelihood and security, that will ensure your nutritional security. Okay, now when we talk about challenges one by one, on the nutritional side we have lots of challenge. Like in India faces a double burden of malnutrition. You see that various reports published in India that talks about malnutrition and that highlight the deep crisis of malnutrition in India. Even we see the people surrounding the road, they leaves there and here, and ultimately they are deficit with the proper nutrition. And not only that, you have to understand that India faces the double burden of malnutrition. On the one side, we have huge population facing a nutritional deficiency, like as per the data in the National Family Health Survey 2019-21, 35% children are stunted, 57% women and 25% men are anemic, meaning they are lacking the iron content. And remember the data for the women, about 60% women are anemic. Okay, that challenges their nutritional health. Okay, that will further burden their basically developmental aspect. And the second is your imbalanced diets and sedentary lifestyles, meaning here the people do have money, the people do have the resources, but they are overeating. Okay, and they are basically depending on the fast food culture, or their lives are sedentary, meaning they doesn't exercise basically. And we have a data like 24% of the adult women and 23% of the adult men are now obese. They are facing with obesity. Okay, now when we come to the another challenge on the producer side, on the farmers side, we are seeing from the historical times like farms income or the farmers income are insufficient, and because of that the marginal and small farmers are facing huge crisis. And you can see, according to a report, more than 68% of the marginal farmers supplement their incomes with non-farm activities. Why they are needed to supplement it? Because the income generated from the agriculture is not sufficient, and this also showcase due to the rise in Manrega demand of work. Okay, so that is the point. So in the farmers side we are also seeing the crisis. Okay, and when we come to the challenges on the environmental side, then the picture is also not good. Like, due to the agriculture burden, there is depleting natural resources. Okay, whether it is the quality of soil, whether it is the forest landscape. Okay, and along with that there is the another biggest challenge of climate change, and that's why these challenges are making India's food production highly vulnerable. And remember, we have a population of 140 plus crore. So to ensure the food to be delivered on the plate of the consumer, on the plate of the citizen, there is a need to strengthen our food production. Okay, and what we are seeing, we are seeing opposite. The quality of the soil is degrading. The groundwater, which is the largest source of irrigation in India, is also rapidly declining. And we can see the example as in the case study of Punjab. Okay, you can read it further. So what is the solution here? We need to have a three-sided approach. Three-sided approach, or we can call it triad approach. Okay, so here in the triad approach we have to engage, we have to intrude into all the three sides of the food system, that is at the consumer level, at the producer, that is at the farmers level, and at the middleman level that connects the consumer with the producer. So how to address the problem at consumer level? First of all, we do know that the consumer like me and you are mostly driving towards the fast food culture and the unhealthy food culture. So there is a need that consumer demand needs to be shifted towards healthy and sustainable diet. Try to think, if we try to shift to the healthy and sustainable diet, the benefit it can possess on you, on the environment, on the health, on the disease burden of India, and many more aspects. So how it can be shifted? Here comes the role of private sector. Like the private sector, we are seeing the restaurants and the hotels that are promoting fast food and the other unhealthy food. They should promote the locally grown millets. Okay, varieties of products, as we have seen in the G20 meetings that was highlighted. Okay, and along with what, to create awareness, we can engage with social media influencers because they have huge followers. And the another important thing, you need to understand the role of private sector, the role of the union government or the state government or any local bodies. Why? Because when we talk about the government, they basically try to ensure the required food to be delivered to the poor peoples. We have the public distribution system, we have the midday meal scheme, we have the railway catering provided by the IRCTC, urban canteens, public and institutional procurement done by the government. So that approximately represents 70% of Indians. Okay, so that means the government interventions via this methodology will help the consumer to be shifted from the unhealthy towards healthy and sustainable diet. And even here comes the role of religious institutions. Like in India, we have the temples and the langars which provide the food to the person. So here we can ensure that quality food is delivered and healthier food are delivered to them. So that is the point. And now when we talk about the second, that is ensuring the resilient incomes for the farmer, and there is a need to have the remunerative and regenerative agricultural practices for the farmers. For example, the mission that is called National Mission on Natural Farming is a good step, but the sustainable agriculture lacks in funding. Like out of the total agricultural budget, we have less than 1% that goes to sustainable agriculture. And apart from that, we should have a focus on various agroecological practices such as agroforestry, conservation agriculture, precision farming. Here, I try to suggest you, please do know about agroforestry, the conservation agriculture, and the precision farming, because UPSC has a favorite in asking these type of questions. Okay, and along with, don't try to give the fertilizer subsidy or other subsidies. Try to have a direct cash support to the farmers per hectare of cultivation, so that this may improve efficiency. Along with agricultural research and extension services should be promoted. And when we come to the third aspect, that is shift focus of the food chains towards more sustainable and inclusive ones. And here the role of middlemen comes. Okay, because when we talk about the food chain is basically the entire chain and the mechanism that basically connects the producer to the consumers and all the infrastructure between them. Okay, so here the role of middlemen comes. So here, the middlemen such as corporations should prioritize direct procurement from farmer and incentivize the procurement. For example, we have the young agricultural tech-up enterprises like Dehat and Ninja Cart. They are promoting that. Okay, and also there is another point, like we have the farmers producer organization. Okay, suppose one farmer producer organization, they are producing wheat, and the another farmer producer organization, they are producing rice. Okay, so try to promote trade between them. Maybe the one farmer producer organization requires rice and another requires wheat, so there can be exchange, and that will also ensure a greater value share for the farmers. So the conclusion is, if we act fast, India has a unique opportunity to get its food system right. So maybe you understood the article, try to follow as well. That will enable your health as well as the reduction in disease burden, and a strengthening our food system in the sustainable manner. So that is the conclusion. Now we are shifting to the second article, and the second article will be related to the GS paper 3. You can link the topic. Okay, so basically, first of all, we have to understand the background. We have seen that India achieved a marvelous achievement in terms of organizing G20 summit. Okay, and not only that, we have a consensus among members on various topics. Okay, so that is the big achievement. But when we talk about the Delhi Declaration, okay, members, when they jointly agreed on various topics, they declare a statement. So the Delhi Declaration is one of that. So basically, the declaration talks about various global issues that are going on, okay, like the climate issue, like the terror issue, and many more issues. But when we talk about the Delhi Declaration, it didn't find consensus on phasing out the fossil fuels. Okay, but the members tried to agree on tripling the renewable energy capacity and a voluntary doubling the energy efficiency by 2030. So that was the point. But when we talk about energy transition, we need to understand what do you mean by it. So transition means what? You are shifting from one to another. That is transition. So energy transition means what? The fossil fuel which you are using, that should be transited to the renewable energy. So that is the energy transition. And why we are promoting it? To tackle the climate change, to tackle the pollution. Okay. So any energy transition initiative, there have two normative ideals to be followed. First of all, we need to internalize the cost, that if we are using the fossil fuel, what will be the cost and the burden in terms of social and environmental. And because if we are able to internalize it, we can shift to the energy transition, because that will help to save our social and environmental cost. The second will be the climate justice. And in terms of climate justice, there is a requirement of compensation for those who are harmed. Remember, when we talk about climate justice, so what do you mean by climate justice? Let's say there are two countries, A and B. Okay, A is are doing developments in terms of industry, in terms of manufacturing, and for that they are releasing lots of greenhouse gas and pollution in the environment. And B, basically, they are not technologically advanced, they are pro environment, okay, pro nature. So basically they are mostly engaged in the natural activities. Okay, but the emissions and the impact will have to face by both of them, A as well as B. Okay, despite B didn't emitted any greenhouse gas. So this is climate injustice, because the burden will be faced by B as well. So in the present scenario, we have lots of country, and we can demarcate as developed and the developing, or the industrialized and the developing nation. So the industrialized nation in the historical times, because of the dominance, they emitted lots of greenhouse gas and pollution, and now we are facing the blunt of that. Okay, and even India we are facing, despite we didn't emit the greenhouse gas in the past, okay, as compared to the amount that was emitted by the developed and the industrialized nation. So here, this is basically climate injustice. So to deal with the climate injustice, what we have to promote? Climate justice. Okay, so that is the point we need to understand. And now, when we talk about the climate injustice, we have basically dealt you the context about climate injustice. So we must invert this carbon injustice. Okay, and but when we talk about India do talks about climate injustice. But remember, India is also prioritizing economic growth as compared to the climatic concerns. Okay, and such a approach may have the impact on the climate justice within India, because when we talk about climate justice, it can be at the international level, that is between the member countries, and also within the country, that is between different communities, can be between poor and can be the rich. Okay, so even within a country there can be climate injustice, like the rich can face less risks to the climate change as compared to the poor. Okay, because they have the resources for adaptation. Okay, they can do, but for the poor, for the agriculture, for the farmers, it may not be possible. So that is the point. And here we have an inequality matrix, and inequality matrix is like the climate change and the energy transition. Basically we are shifting from fossil fuels to the renewable, okay, to the clean energy. So they are also disproportionately affecting the poor. Remember, the energy transition also affecting the poor. How we are going to see? First of all, we will see the impact of climate change, how they are affecting the poor people, the marginalized people. So we talk about climate change and the impact, like the droughts, flood, agricultural crisis. Who doom they performed by these activity? Basically the poorer and the vulnerable sections. Okay, so the blunt of climate change will be on these people. And also, due to the climate change, the oceanic temperature is rising, that are hurting the fishing communities, because fishes are dying or not available at the location that were used to be available. Okay, so to achieve the sustainable and equitable development, we need to address both environmental and socio-economic inequalities simultaneously. Okay, and remember that when we talk about less equitable society like India, we do have less equitable society because we have the gap in terms of gender gap, in terms of income gap, and many more. So they have higher emission output per unit of economic activity. That means that if the climate change and the impact gets further enhancement, that means it will deepen the existing inequality. Okay, and it will affect the livelihood of the poor, and also it will exacerbate the inequality in terms of class, caste, regional disparity. Okay, and in terms of caste, we see in various data like the backward class or the marginalized class, they have weak representation in the formal economy. So if the burden of climate change increases more, that means these community will be getting further affected, and also the regional disparity, because not all the locations in India have the same development, okay, progress. So there will be the increase in regional disparity. Although India has an ambitious target of 40% of total installed power generation capacity to be from the clean energy or renewable energy, along with we have the net zero emissions by 2070. We have placed in the like nationally determined contributions. Okay, but these targets we are focusing upon, this needs to have a careful study and its implications. So why this article is talking about to have a careful study? Because remember that India and the India's energy sector, we are majorly dependent on coal. Okay, and our industrial sector is also the largest consumer of the energy. Okay, followed by transport, then residential, and the agriculture. That means the manufacturing sector is mostly dependent on these coal energy. So if we are focusing on energy transition, that is from the fossil fuel or the coal based energy to the renewable energy, maybe the cost in transition for these industry, for the manufacturing sector in India may get rise, and that will affect the whole manufacturing sector because of increased cost, and that will affect the employability of the population. Okay, still we know that our manufacturing base is very weak when we compare the manufacturing base with the China, with the US. So there is a need to be alert, and a just transition is needed for the holistic approach. Okay, so while renewable energy adoption is crucial, but this shift should not exaggerate the existing disparity. Okay, and we can say also one point, that the region where we have the power plants, okay, like the NTPC or the other energy power plants, they are located on what, where, on which region? Basically on those regions where economic disparity is large, where the poor people is large. So actually they are facing the challenges of poverty as well, pollution as well, and low quality employment. But when we talk about the renewable energy deployment, so the renewable energy deployment is more focused to the more wealthier states, like in the northwestern region like Gujarat or the Rajasthan or the southern states. Okay, so that means the people of this region will get employment, because in this region people do have the better skills. But in the eastern region like Bihar, Jharkhand, okay, Chhattisgarh, where these coal power plants are there, they lacks the good skills. Okay, they are under skilled. So despite we are moving to the transition, these people may do not move to the skill that are required for the like work in the renewable sector. So that may increase the unemployability, and also that may harm their livelihood. So that is the point, and these are the challenge we have discussed, and that's why a shift to the renewable energy can potentially halt this generational mobility. How you should understand this point as well, because many fossil fuel firms or the companies are public sector, and in the public sector we see that the people are represented from the different background. Okay, people are given reservation here, so that the backward community or the Dalit should also be represented in the jobs. Okay, so but if renewable energy we are promoting, and let's say the promoter is the private sector, so the opportunity for the Dalits may not be the case which was in the fossil fuel firms. So that is the point. So to ensure an equitable and sustainable transition, strategies must target inequality reduction and green investment. Okay, and now we are coming to the greening federalism, and also like the regions which are heavily reliant on the coal production, like the states of Jharkhand, the state of Chhattisgarh, the state of like uh, Madhya Pradesh. Okay, they are heavily reliant on the coal production, and this also give them the revenue in terms of taxes, in terms of royalty they charge. So if we are transiting toward the renewable, that means there may be the loss of revenues as well as livelihood. Okay, and like you can see that despite the pollution it causes, the coal sector owned by the public sector miners, almost 85%, is the main source of revenue via tax, royalties, or the employment. Okay, so there is also state specific programs for the reskilling development and local rehabilitation which is needed. So there is a need of green deal, okay, to have a federal deal, and here the union government or the state government need to act in a cooperative manner to have a proper policy alignment and cooperation, okay, to handle this challenge. So that is the end of this article. Hope you understood. Now we are shifting to the next article, like the ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, drones delivers drug. So basically experiment was going on, you may had heard that in the Himachal Pradesh, basically there was an experiment in the Lahul Spiti region of the Himachal Pradesh where the essential medicines was tried to be delivered to the needed hospital on an experimental basis. So that was successfully done. And why this is a big milestone? Because when we talk about the geographical locations of Himachal Pradesh or other Himalayan state, so there are rough there are rough surface, okay, they are difficult surface, maybe the vehicles may not go well, so there is a need of air service, but the air service may be costly in terms of the fuel they require, okay. So the innovation of drones do have a role that they can supply the essential medicines in a good time, in a less time, okay, that can also save the patient's life as well. So that is a good thing and it can be utilized in other Himalayan state as well. So that was the experiment. And the drone, the significance of drone is very much increasing, like for the defense, for the security, for the border sensitivity areas, okay. And we have in the previous lecture discussed about the drone India is buying from the USA. What is the name of that drone? Please tell me. Not the drone but unmanned aerial vehicle, okay. That will basically increase awareness visibility for India. So you can understand the increasing role of drones. That's why UPSC did ask the question in this year paper, okay. So now we are shifting to the last article that will be talking about the cervical cancer. So basically the cervical cancer is a type of cancer that basically affects the woman, okay. And the cervical cancer basically starts in the cells of the cervix. And when we talk about the cervix, it is basically the lower narrow end of the uterus, that is the womb, okay. And who is responsible? The HPV virus, human papilloma virus, okay. And they play very role in causing the most cervical cancer. And how it gets transmitted through the sexual contact. Basically when a female gets exposed to HPV, so the body's immune system basically does not cause any harm to the virus, and that's why for the longer time the virus remains in the woman's body. And some of the virus in the coming times, okay, do survives for the years, and that ultimately lead to the some cervical cells to become the cancer cells, and they start spreading and thus damaging the health of the woman. And we have the highest burden of cervical cancer in India, okay, as compared to the global world. Like the cervical cancer is the second most common cancer in a woman after breast cancer. Breast cancer is the first common and the second is your cervical cancer. And India contributes the largest share of the global cervical cancer burden, like nearly 1 in every 4 death globally due to cervical cancer is in India. And why I am discussing this article? Because in handling with the cervical cancer issue, we have the regional disparity between the states. Some of the state performs well to mitigate the risks of cervical cancer and the treatment that are required, but various states do not perform well, like the data showcases it, okay. You can also read this data later. So that is the point and that is the end of the article. And now coming to the answer, the answer is basically only two pair. Why? Because you should look the first statement. The concept of a stupa is Buddhist in origin. No, the stupa was very much like in use during the Buddhism phase, okay. And stupas was basically the mounds, and here the relics of Buddha were kept, and they were treated as basically the very pure place to worship. But the origin of a stupa concept is much more older than the origin of Buddhism. In fact, in the Rig Veda, okay, there is a mention of a stupa as well. So that means the statement 1 is incorrect, and the statement 2, a stupa was generally a repository of the relics. Yes, you can find the shape like this of a stupa. Okay, tell me where the Sachi stupa is located. Tell me where the Sarnath stupa is located. Tell me in the comment box. And the third statement is the stupa was the votive and commemorative structure in the Buddhist tradition. Yes, this is correct. Okay, and stupa represents what? Nirvana or Mahaparinirvana? Okay, tell me also in the comment box. So this is the end of the article. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you are liking our initiative, please do like, share, subscribe and promote into your friend circle. Thank you friends. We will meet again with our next discussion. Thank you very much.